Okay, so whoever's not muted yet, I think some of you aren't. Make sure to do so we can have it be nice and quiet. And that was Trevor Hall in the beginning. In case you don't know him, he's really, really awesome. And I'm gonna get started now. So many things to handle on the Zoom. Navigating lots of stuff to get us going. Okay, we're actually gonna start with a little practice. And I love to start things with a practice because then we can actually get grounded. And this is called resourcing. So for those of you who have never experienced anything somatic in your body, resourcing is really about really noticing how our body can feel good in the moment. Oh, whoever that is, please mute yourself. Everybody, please mute yourself. Make sure mute.
Marina, you should be able to mute all the participants on your end as well.
That's
There's
right.
a little spot there where you can do it.
Thank you. You're awesome. Just did that. All the Zoom knowledge. So we're going to start with a little bit of grounding. And I just want you to start by closing your eyes. And you can do this either seated or standing up. It's up to you. So we're going to close our eyes and we're going to start to just notice our body and how we feel. And just taking a few deep breaths. I want you to breathe in through your nose, and then we're going to take a breath out through the mouth, kind of like when you're blowing on hot soup. So let's do this together. Breathing in and out. And breathing in and out through the mouth. And one more time, breathing in and breathing out. And just start to notice what is already shifting in your body, what's happening in your chest, in your belly, all the sensations that are coming in. Maybe you can feel some tingling like I do from all this beautiful group energy. Maybe it's something else. Just start to notice your body in this moment. And notice your feet on the ground. Notice where all the contact points are between your feet and the ground. And as you notice your feet on the ground, I want you to actually notice this in your body, what it feels like for the earth to be supporting your feet. There's not much you need to do here. Just completely surrender your weight and your feet into the earth. So notice what it's like to just be held and supported. And I would like for you to bring up this image of swimming in a beautiful warm lake. And as you swim, all of the sand starts to kind of come to the surface or, just come up into the water. And then you decide to pause. You decide to pause and stand. And you look down into the lake and you see all the sand begin to settle. Just notice how that feels in your chest and in your belly, in your shoulders, as the sand just begins to slowly, slowly float all the way to the bottom of the lake that is still and peaceful and calm. And let's just all stay here for just a moment in our body, just noticing what this feels like. Maybe taking a couple more deep breaths. And as you become ready, really gently opening your eyes and not instantly going into the screen, but just open your eyes gently and let yourself take in your space where you're sitting, and just notice it and see maybe something changed after this little exercise. Maybe the colors are different. Maybe you feel like more part of the space. But just let yourself notice that before coming back to our screen. And I'm just curious to hear from everyone how that was for you in the chat. If you can just drop in, just one word. Let us know how you're feeling, relaxing, beautiful, peaceful, calming. Hi, Marcy. Grounding. I love that. Centering. Yeah. Present, grounding. I love that. And I also want you to know that if it wasn't grounding, that's totally fine. Difficult at first. Yeah, that's totally fine if it wasn't. It's okay, because our bodies are always changing and we're always kind of learning about our bodies. So every experience is just kind of an insight into ourselves, a wider view of my surrounding. Hi, Jamie. Beautiful. So what we actually just did is, again, it's called resourcing, and it's a really beautiful way to start to regulate our nervous system, which of course we're going to talk lots and lots about today. But this is something you can really use, and it can be through a memory. It can be through a place that you really love. It can be through all kinds of different ways where you allow your body to just ground and be peaceful, and that really shifts your nervous system. So I'm going to share a little bit about the flow for today. We're going to talk about triggers. Obviously, we're all here for the triggers. What is a trigger, how it relates to trauma, and then healing versus regulation, what it actually means to heal and what it means to regulate your nervous system. We're going to talk about polyvagal theory, which is so cool, and it just brings so much compassion when we learn about it. So I'm really excited to share with you. We're also going to learn about emotions, and I feel like that is something that's really not talked about very often in the world in general. So I'm really excited to share about emotions, and we're going to have a bunch of practices mixed in. So you'll get to enjoy that. So I really like to kind of like, talk, and you feel free to take notes as well, and then do a little practice. And I want you to know that every practice is a suggestion, right? So a lot of times we can feel like so forced to do things, and everything that I'm offering you is truly an offering. So I want you to really ask yourself before you join a practice, does this feel good? Does this feel overwhelming? Maybe I just want to watch and just be here and just, take it in that way. So really it's a suggestion. And that's where the trauma-informed piece of my work comes in. So just remember that. Yes, Mara. And please hold your questions to the end, because I get very distracted. I cannot multitask at all. So we will have to, and I'm like having to admit people as we go too. So I'm not gonna lie, it's a challenge for my system to do all this stuff at once. So just know that we are gonna have 30 minutes at the end for all your questions. Hopefully we'll cover a lot of them. And if not, life is long and beautiful. So you will get answers to everything. So just hold them until the end. All right, so I'm going to start with just sharing a little bit about my own story with you. And I love to share this, number one, because I think some of you probably don't know me very well, and I don't know you. So it's kind of a way to meet each other. And also because I really personally benefit from hearing other people's stories with trauma and triggers and like how it shifted for them. And I feel like it really removes a lot of layers of shame and just gives us a lot of hope. So a few years ago, I remember it was almost like an intention that I set for the new year that I really wanted to learn how to enjoy challenge because I was like, okay, I want to grow as a person and I feel like we grow by like enjoying a challenge and not feeling like challenges suck and we just want to avoid them because essentially we grow through challenges, right? and and I had no idea how to do that. And what I later realized is actually I wanted to learn about triggers. That is what challenge actually is. And I wanted it to be fun. I wanted triggers to actually be fun and not involve so much suffering like they were. And at that time, I was really doing a lot of personal development work from my mind, which I feel like probably a lot of you can resonate with, right? That we just get this message of like, think positive or change your thoughts. And I really thought that was like the way to do it, but it wasn't working at all. It was some of it was shaming, and then a lot of it was just like not working at all in general. And that was when I kind of started to learn about somatic work and working through the body. And I actually had this intuition that I really wanted to go to a therapist that would work through the body. And I was like, does that exist? That I don't know, and I would just ask around. And eventually I was actually led to my somatic experiencing therapist. And that's where I learned what an impact the body has, and I think that talk therapy is wonderful in so many cases. And I did talk therapy for years. But the issue is, and we're really going to talk about this today, is that when your nervous system is not regulated, and I'll explain what that actually means very soon, everything that you're saying comes from a trauma response. So it really doesn't shift anything. You just perpetuate the same cycle. So that was my experience. Like I have a challenge, I talk about it, it's kind of fun that someone, is listening and is there for me, but nothing changes. And so when I started to do somatic experiencing, which is one of the somatic body-based modalities out there in the world, and this is a modality by Peter Levine, I started, like at first it was really, really hard. And I literally couldn't stay in my body for more than 10 minutes. I would fall asleep. I literally within 10 minutes was asleep with my therapist. And then over time, and I'm talking like 2 years, and I'm saying this because a lot of people are like, when is it going to get better, right? Like, I want it now. Which is, by the way, that urgency is also part of our trauma. It's very much like a trauma response. And so over time, like that window of being able to be in my body and feel my sensations and connect to my emotions really increased. And the benefits were insane. I started to just enjoy life. Like I started to, go for a walk and just enjoy everything and not just say in my head, like, this is a nice street and this river, it looks nice. And I think I feel good, right? Like I was actually in my body, like enjoying it so much. And it was just magnificent. And I was so excited. And I started to understand what regulation is of my nervous system on a very, very deep level that I only understood cognitively until I worked it in my body. And I had to work through a lot of, big trauma like sexual abuse and emotional abuse and immigrations. I was born in Ukraine and then I moved to Israel when I was 2 years old, which was very like, I later actually realized through friends, some of them on this call, you know who you are, that it was like being a refugee because there was no plan. It was like, we're going to leave communist, USSR and come to Israel and then we'll figure it out. Like we had no plan and we were just standing on the street and hoping for the best. And then someone took us in literally off the street. And then also moving to the US, again, better planned, but not much planned, like not knowing a lot of people. And so it's been quite a journey, and a lot of little traumas picked up on the way. And so when I came back to San Diego about 6 years ago, I started my first business. And I know a lot of you are business owners as well. And I started teaching people how to go plant-based. And I started to see a lot of stuckness with my clients that I was coaching with knowing all the things, like having all the information, but not doing it. And so I kind of want you to think about, is that kind of what happens to you a lot of times? Doesn't have to be with food, but like you want to do something and you know all the things, like you know the steps, but you don't do it. And yes, just that height. Yeah, and me too, so often. And so it's like, what is going on? I was like so fascinated because I was like, okay, is there something wrong with these people? Or is there something wrong with me? Like, am I doing a bad job as a coach? Like, what's going on, right? And so I really wanted to uncover this stuckness. And I also found myself very, very stuck in my own work and in my own life. Like, I wasn't getting what I wanted. I knew what I wanted, and I wasn't doing it. It wasn't happening. Even though I knew all the things, like I knew all the marketing things in my business, I knew the strategy, I knew what to do, but like things were not moving, results weren't coming. So I started, I say curious now, but like obviously at the time I was like, kill me, it was frustrating. And now I've shifted so much of that into curiosity, which makes a huge difference, and procrastination, totally. And so, when I found somatic work, I was certified as a coach, actually, with the Institute for Coaching Mastery, and the person who was leading that was actually a somatic therapist. So I was like, interesting. And I then was certified through the Embody Lab with the Integrative Somatic Therapy certification. And that's how I was like, okay, I'm going to do this work with people because it is a game changer. And it totally, totally changed my life. Just being able to be in the present moment, to be connected to myself and my body, and to really create the life that I want, which is so cool because there are 58 people here, which is insane. And I was like, when I always create things from inspiration. And when I created this masterclass, it was literally like an inspired moment. And I was like, I really want 100 people to sign up for this masterclass. And my partner was like, that's not going to happen. Like, don't get your hopes up, because he remembers the old version that was like, I want exactly 100. And if it doesn't happen, I'm going to feel disappointed. I'm going to feel, all these things. And I was like, hey, I'm not attached to it, but it would be really cool. And more than 100 of you signed up. So I think, I've been like kind of basking that all day today, just feeling so good and so like this is really a testament from the outside world to this inner work that I've done for so long, and that is finally paying off. And I just get so excited because I know the gap. Oh, thank you so much. I know the gap of where I used to be, which is literally like days in bed, feeling stuck, feeling numb, feeling anxious, just all these things, just so frustrated, taking out my emotions on everyone around, right? To like where I'm at now. And it's just so exciting. So I'm sharing that because I fully 1,000% believe that it's possible for every single one of us. If it was possible for me, it's possible for every single human. And so it's possible for you for sure. And I really, really believe that. And now I live with my partner in San Diego, partner of 11 years, lots of triggers in relationships. We'll talk about that today too. And I have an awesome cat who just ran out the door. I don't know if you heard her, but she's pretty funny and spunky. And I've supported thousands of people with this work through social media. I know a lot of us are connected through Instagram and through one-on-one coaching and group coaching. It's been really, really amazing. Also, I forgot to mention, at the end, before we get to the Q&A in this masterclass, I'm going to share something super exciting with you, which is an online course. This is my first online course that I'm creating in somatics, and I'm so excited to share it with you. And I'm going to share kind of, the structure of it and everything and how you can access it. And this online course is called the same as this masterclass, Treasures in the Trigger. And it really walks you through everything that I'm sharing today, but in detail and step by step and all that good stuff. So I forgot to mention that. So I want to show you something pretty cool that I created. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen here. Can everybody see this? Just see a few. Yes. Okay, cool. Hi, Alyssa. So this is kind of funny. I'm like so not a person who like programs or math or all that stuff. But anyway, I like literally had a dream one night, and it was like lucid charts. So I made this in lucid charts, which is really cool. That's a side note. Check it out. It's a cool little mapping tool. I was like, I want to map out this process because it feels so good to have a roadmap, especially when we're dealing with trauma. It's like, oh, I know what to do. This is great. So this is a roadmap, and don't get overwhelmed because I know it's intense, but I'm just going to kind of summarize it for you so that you know kind of where this is all going and how it all works. And then we'll dive deeper into some of these elements. So we start with a trigger, right? Trigger occurs in real time. At that moment, you're going to have lots of thoughts when the trigger occurs. But what I want you to do and what the goal of this work is to hold your horses and not go into the thoughts, because the thoughts are not logical and they sound pretty crazy. Like they're just like all over the place because our nervous system state is not regulated. And actually, the part of our brain that is the logical part of our brain is turned off. So we're going to go into the body. That is the first thing we're going to do. And so the question that I want you to ask yourself is, am I regulated? Do I have capacity in my body? And if the answer is no, our first priority is to regulate our nervous system. And we do that within the body. And so the next question is, where am I at in my nervous system? Am I in fight or flight? And fight or flight is anxiety, stress, like really anxious thoughts, right? Really fearful, rage and anger, that's anxiety. Or am I in shutdown? And when we're in shutdown, we feel numb, we feel maybe really tired, we feel helpless and hopeless, we're not connected to our body. And so each of these states is going to have practices, which you can see up here and down here, that you can do to actually regulate your body and return to feeling a sense of capacity. Because in order to process our emotions and to do healing work, which is through processing our emotions, we need to feel safe. We need to feel regulated. We need to feel calm. And so otherwise we can re-traumatize ourselves. So the first priority is right here, regulating our body. And we're going to go through a few of these practices. Once you are regulated, your priority is to do the healing work. And to me, the healing work is really about, emotions. It's really, and I'm like, why doesn't anyone talk about emotions? We need to know what to do with our emotions and not ignore them. Even within somatics, there's a lot of kind of ignoring and avoiding of emotions. And I find that in order to really, truly heal our body from within, we need to work with our emotions. So here I put a bunch of practices, which we will also do one of them today to work with emotions. And so during that process of working with our emotions and allowing emotions to pass through, we might get dysregulated again. It might feel like too much for our body. And at that point, we come back to regulation, right? And here I also noted, how do I know if I'm regulated? What does that mean? So dysregulation symptoms include, I feel like I'm like a doctor, dysregulation symptoms include feeling, having a difficulty to stay present in your body, having a lot of thoughts, dissociating, so kind of feeling like you're hovering over your body, feeling freeze or a sensation of numbness, like you can't access parts of your body, or intense anxiety. That's dysregulation, essentially. And so if we experience that in the middle of this process of working with our emotions, we come back to regulation. And then if we are regulated, we complete this process. We allow the emotions to move through, and then we feel grounded, we feel present, we feel centered and connected. And only at that point do we then do this mental reflection, right? And we journal and we, process like what happened in the trigger and that kind of a thing. And then after this whole process, that trigger will probably return, but we're going to feel it a lot less, right? So for example, I used to get very, very, very triggered by any sign of rejection, even like a friend not calling me back or canceling on me, super triggered, right? And as I went through this whole process, now when it happens, I still feel it. It's not that it's like gone completely, but it's so, so small, right? So that's pretty exciting. And in terms of our behavior, a lot of coaching tells you to just change your behavior. Are you procrastinating? Set your alarm for 6 a.m. But it's like, we can't do that, right? We can't stick to it. And so this is all about moving through the stuckness in a way that actually works. We're going to take tiny, tiny behavioral steps to shift, right? So we're going to actually step outside our comfort zone in a tiny way, not in a big way. Because if we force our system to, take a huge leap out, we'll go into shutdown, we'll go into overwhelm, and we are essentially re-traumatizing ourselves. So I really, really emphasize in my work, taking baby steps. It's very, very important. And it's very effective. I know in our culture, everyone's like, do the thing, do it fast, like all that kind of, conversation. And I really find it to be so ineffective because it just gets us, again, stuck in that loop. And also, when that trigger returns and you are so much less triggered, it's also about allowing yourself to really celebrate that and to feel joy and pride and excitement and to really feel that in your body. Not just be like, oh, that was cool. Like, I feel like I'm growing as a person, but like, oh my God, that was so amazing, right? Like the other day when I was, hiking with my partner and I felt angry at him and I was able to process it within my body instead of taking it out on him, which we're going to talk about. And at the end of the hike, he's like, what happened to you? You're like a new person. I actually let myself celebrate that, not avoiding like joy and excitement and pride in myself, but I actually celebrated it. So that's super, super important. So this is a little roadmap that I made. I'm very proud of it. And the online course that I created, literally every module just dives into each part of this process. So I'm going to stop my share here. And now we're going to go into what are triggers in general. So when we are surprised, it is incredibly motivating. Yeah, it really is motivating. So I'm going to talk for a little bit about what a trigger is, and then, the relationship between triggers and trauma, and then we're going to do a little practice. So feel free to take some notes right now. So basically, a trigger is an unproportional reaction to an event, and it's really driven by survival energy, survival activation. And this is really important to notice because we can really judge ourselves in that moment, but really our body is just learning to survive and in survival mode. It's physiological, our response to it. It's also driven by past memories, and this can go back, of course, to your childhood and things that you don't remember, but it even can go back to generations. And it becomes, this past trauma and stress is really like glasses through which you see reality. So once you work through a trigger, the same situation can happen and your response becomes proportional. It's like, oh, this thing happened and I need to work on it or fix it. Whereas if you're triggered, it feels enormous. It feels overwhelming. It feels crazy, right? It feels huge. And it's really important to notice that triggers happen in our body. It is accompanied by thoughts, of course, but it happens viscerally in our body and it feels very, very charged, this sensation. It doesn't feel like, a little bit and, I can deal with this, but it just feels like, oh, this is intense, right? And the behavior is also very reactive, right? So we can yell or we can completely shut down and kind of want to run away. And this is driven by all unconscious things, right? Because if we were to understand it fully and integrate it in our body, we wouldn't have this reaction or response. So it's really important to work on self-compassion around triggers, because when we have this self-compassion and we realize this is like the most vulnerable part of ourselves that is coming out right now, it moves through quicker. We can actually see what's happening when we don't judge it. And what's actually happening is that your nervous system is either activated or deactivated. So your nervous system is either in hyperarousal, that anxiety, fear, anger, intensity, or hypoarousal, which means shut down, helplessness, shrinking, that kind of a thing. And we also leave our window of tolerance. So our window of tolerance is this window where we can handle stuff. We can just handle the ups and downs of life. It doesn't mean that we are just like peaceful and blissful and we feel so happy and it's all perfect. Yes, you can definitely be in both hyper and hypoarousal, which is like gas and brake at the same time. And so in the window of tolerance, we're grounded, but we can still experience emotion and we just feel resourced. We feel like we know what to do with life. We know how to handle the ups and downs of life. And when we are triggered, we leave that window of tolerance, right? We feel under resourced. We feel like I don't have the resources to deal with this situation. So triggers are actually opportunities. That's how I see them. And that's kind of the perspective that I'm offering for you, is that triggers are opportunities to process trauma that we haven't processed. And we can, if we go through trauma, and I will explain how I see trauma in a moment, it's not just, car accidents and abuse. It can be really small, simple things too that we don't realize are traumatic. Our body doesn't realize that we survived it. Our brain can say, oh, it's fine, like I went through this and I'm okay. But our body and our emotions still are in that alarmed state, still are in that survival response. And that survival response drives us. So we start to see the world through those glasses, right? And we start to respond to the world through those glasses. And we're not really living in our bodies. We're not living authentically. We're not our real selves, which never feels good when we're living out of that survival response. And if we didn't have triggers, we just would never know about it. So really, and this even has an impact on your physical health, huge impact. There's even studies around that. I'll be sharing some emails. I wrote up some awesome emails for all of you for afterwards with more of this info about emotions and trauma and how, emotions really get trapped in our body if you don't process them. So triggers are opportunities to take the glasses off, to take the masks off, and to start being ourselves, which feels so alive and liberating. And essentially, when we're triggered, it's unhealed trauma that is surfacing that's actually ready to be integrated. And by integrated, I mean that we go through the trauma and we allow all of the survival responses to come up and we move through them and we move through the emotions. And it's like the sense of peace that comes on after that. And if we integrate triggers properly, we can start to live life very proactively rather than reactively, right? So for example, in business, it's like, oh my God, I don't control anything. Things are happening to me. I don't have any impact on anything. That is kind of that survival reactive response. Or in relationships, oh, this is so frustrating. Like it's never going to get better. My partner and I are always going to be in this cycle, right? And so when we integrate trauma, It looks like stronger relationships, more intimacy and connection, confidence, and just all the good stuff. So it's amazing. And the best part, in my opinion, about integrating trauma and triggers is aliveness. Just feeling that you are living life. You're not shut down to life. You're not overwhelmed. You're actually part of life. You're an active participant in your life and you're creating life. And it just feels amazing. So now we're going to move to talking about the very fun topic of trauma. Who doesn't love talking about trauma? It's funny because a lot of people are very kind of scared of talking about trauma, right? And I think it's such a fun topic, and it's it's such an opportunity for us when we really recognize it, when we see it, and we realize that it's not that scary, and we actually have power here with trauma. So for me, like when I learned about trauma, I started to really feel so empowered in my life. So that's why I love talking about it. So I feel so excited. Oh, that's awesome. I love that. And really my goal is that when we talk about trauma, we can feel excited. It doesn't have to be heavy all the time. It doesn't have to be hard and painful. This work can be easy. It can be fun. That's really, really my goal. So trauma is anything overwhelming. Very simple, anything overwhelming. And what that actually means is a lot of people really focus on the event, but really trauma is about what is happening within you, right? Gabor Mate, I think, is the one that has that quote, trauma is not what happened to you, but what is happening within you. And it's really about your response to the situation. So it's going to vary. For some people, something might be traumatizing, and for others, it won't. And there's no judgment about it, right? Hopefully. There is a lot in our society, unfortunately. But internally, we can really understand that it is how resourced we feel, meaning, do I have the resources to deal with the situation? It can be financial, it can be having people that I can talk to, community. It can be how well do I know to deal with my emotions when things come up. All these different types of resources to make something traumatizing or not. And there's this concept, I'm just going to name it for those of you who have heard it. I don't like the names of these categories, so I'm not going to keep using them, but basically it's big T and little t trauma. Have you ever heard of that? Big T and little t. So I like to just say, two categories of trauma. One that is very commonly we hear about, which is, the big stuff like the abuse and the violence and the assault and things that were okay, and war, all this type of thing. And of course, I think in society, we're already aware that it's pretty traumatizing. And then the other category, which honestly, and I have had the big T trauma, right? But I honestly, these days, am so much more interested in the little T trauma. It's actually fascinating. I feel like understanding it actually gives us more compassion to the world in general. So little T trauma is basically very mundane, everyday things that just repeat. And some examples are being ignored by our parents, usually, or other people, getting too much attention, being criticized, moving, and feeling different, like you're different. And those are just little examples, right? So it's things that just repeat in our life that don't feel consequential, they don't feel big, but they leave a mark on then our responses to the world. And it's kind of again, these glasses, right? They start to drive reality. And when I think of wearing glasses, I think of it's not really me. It's not fully me. There's another element, just visually, thinking about yourself with glasses, there's another element that's kind of driving you, and it's not just you. And when you take it off, it's just you again. So it's really nice to take off that element. And one really fascinating example that I really kind of value of this type of trauma, and when I share it, just notice we all probably had that, right? Is when you're a baby and you cry, right? And then that day, your parents just had a really exhausting day. They took care of you, didn't sleep at night, they're too tired. You're crying and you want them to soothe you, right? But they don't. They're just like, oh, not this again, right? And you feel that kind of response to yourself. And then you develop shame because you're like, oh my God, should I not cry? Like, of course, it's not conscious, right? It's a baby, but that's just the physiological thing going on in your body. It's a shame, like, should I not cry? Like, what do I do? So you develop this shame and this shutdown, and then maybe you feel sad because no one's soothing you, or you feel angry at your parents. And again, they're not meeting you with those emotions, right? They're not there to comfort you. They're not there to soothe you. And so you shut down because you feel like, well, I guess I shouldn't feel this way because it's going to disconnect me from my caregivers who are my strategy for survival. And if that happens a lot, which I feel like probably, I don't know how many people that happens to, probably most of us, right? Because parents, like, they have so much to deal with, that becomes a trauma. And it can develop into rejection trauma, for example, or different types of things. So I feel like it's so fascinating to see it from that perspective, because every single one of us has something like this that maybe doesn't sound like trauma, but it becomes trauma. So let's just take a breath. I feel like we need a breath after that. Collective breath. And the last piece before we go into our little practice that I want to share with you are things that we lose when we have trauma. And as I share this, I want you to actually start to notice kind of what resonates with you. So the first one is safety, right? So we lose safety. We lose our ability to feel safe in our body, but also in situations. So maybe that means that you go through life and you feel a sense of danger. You're always like scanning and you feel like you're in danger. Connection. So connection to your body. Maybe there's numbness that develops. It's really hard for you to go into your body. You have a lot of thoughts, maybe. Connection to other people as well, right? Agency. So agency means I have the ability to influence the outcome of my life. We kind of lose that. We lose that belief, that trust. And the next one is trust. And that can be trust in ourselves. It can be trust in other people. And then the last one is choice. We feel like we don't have a choice. When you say, I have to, I should, I must, those kinds of statements. All of those things are very trauma driven. So I want you to take a moment and see which ones you experience often. And I will share them again. Which ones do you experience often in your life? So safety, connection, agency, trust, and choice. And I would love for you to put in the chat, which of these do you feel like show up for you a lot? Like a loss of them. Agency and trust. Yeah. Cool. All of them. I resonate with that one. Yep. Yes. Cool. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And just like a quick one, I wasn't planning to share this, but I just love this. I actually learned it from a friend of mine, JC, who's brilliant, about choice. And that is a practice of entering a room and actually noticing all the choices that you have in that room. So for example, I can sit on this chair. I can leave because there's a door. I can sit on that other chair. And that might sound really, really simple, and it is, but I feel like the biggest transformation actually happens from simple actions, right? So if choice is one of yours, start to see how you can practice this consciously in your life. Like, here are all my choices, and I can actually see them. I do this a lot with my mom, and I feel like it really helped her because she has, and I was like that too, in the past, I would say I should and I have to, and I would just notice this whole like charge in my body of like, I have to, right? And so really practicing in those moments, being like, even asking yourself, do I though? Do I have to? Right? It's really, really powerful. Yeah. Okay. So now I want to pause here, and I want to also suggest you to actually notice how you're taking in the information so far in this masterclass. Because I've been chatting with a lot of you, and oh, holding your breath, interesting. Yeah, that's really good to notice that. And I really want you to do it with compassion, right? It's not about judging or shaming yourself. I know that I used to come to these classes and hire coaches and hire, whatever, with this like, oh my God, this is gonna save me. Finally, I'm gonna have an answer. And this is like so urgent for me. And I need this answer like right now. And right. So just notice in your body, like what's showing up for you. Do you feel present? Do you feel grounded? You're having sleepy. Yes, totally. Sleepy. My mind keeps wandering. Yep, yep, yep. Really amazing awareness. Cold toes. Whenever I'm on actually doing something, my body gets heavy. Yep. Having a hard time paying attention. Yeah. Anxious that I won't get all the notes. Yep. I love it. Blurry eyes. Yep. So notice how your body is so smart, right? It's like giving you all these clues. And whenever I feel tired, sometimes it's just like, I'm tired. It's all good. But sometimes it's like, I can't take this in, or this is overwhelming, right? And I mentioned that in the beginning, when I would go into my body, I would fall asleep within like 10 minutes. So a lot of times when we're having all this like trauma conversation, our body is working. It's already processing, right? And this is not conscious. It's not like you're like, oh yes, you're bringing up memories for me, but your body is already having things come up. So just notice how fascinating that is. And it's all clues, it's all information to tell us, what we need and where we're at. That's all that it is. So I just want you to notice that and see if, we have like, hour and a half ish. I want you to notice if you can actually just give your body what it needs. Maybe you need to pause. You like literally need to mute the computer and just take a breath with yourself, right? Or maybe you just like need to lay down and get cozy or have a glass of water. So this is like a huge piece of my work with people, is like actually being attuned to your needs, and I'm not God at all, right? And so I don't have the answer. Actually, your body has the answer. So it's really like about listening to your body and what your body needs. So just see if you can kind of play with that for the rest of the class today. And with all of the overwhelm, which I totally get, when we talk a lot about trauma, that's like what just starts to happen for a lot of us. We're going to do a little resourcing practice right now so that we can come back to our bodies. And any type of resourcing, what we did in the very beginning of the class and what we're going to do now, you can really use that a lot in your day. Everyone kind of, different things work for everyone, but you can really work your nervous system in beautiful ways through resourcing. And I recommend doing it not when you're like at a 10 out of 10 losing your shit, right? But when you're like at a 2 and you notice a little bit of like dysregulation, a little bit of overwhelm, a little bit of sleepiness, just like, oh, I'm not really present right now, but not like, right? Not like mid trigger. So this is a way to start to train your body and your nervous system to get regulated faster. So we're gonna go through it, and I'm gonna offer like a few different suggestions. Again, just reminding you, everything is a suggestion. Nothing I say you have to do, right? And I know that's obvious, but I say it for all of us who grew up feeling like they have to do things. So we're gonna just do this either seated again or standing up or even laying down. It's up to you, just closing your eyes. And first and foremost, I want you to see how you can get super comfy. Okay, so maybe that involves grabbing a pillow, maybe it involves grabbing a blanket. Just like notice what you really need in this moment and how you can really get yourself super, super comfortable and like really settle in. And maybe you start sitting, but you're like, this is not super comfortable. So maybe then you decide to shift to laying down on the ground or on the sofa. Just notice what you need. We're all different. And see if you can just let yourself surrender maybe 1%, 5% more. Surrender your body to whatever is holding your body. Just feel the ground kind of pulling you in. And from here, I want you to bring up a memory from the last few months where you just felt amazing. It could be super simple, like just on a walk that just felt really good, or maybe in a conversation with a friend. Just a memory where you were alone or with people and you just felt really, really good. So let yourself bring in this memory into your mind. And just notice what you can see in this memory. Maybe what you were wearing, where you were at, the colors. And then noticing what you can hear. Maybe it's just like silent, or maybe there's sounds. Really take those in. Maybe you could taste something. Maybe you were eating something really yummy. And then notice what you could smell. Just bring that into your senses. And notice what you could sense on your skin. Maybe it was sunshine or wind or the comfort of your blanket. And as you do this, start to notice your body. Start to notice any sensation at all, even if it's teeny tiny in your body. Sometimes this takes practice and focused attention. So just let yourself, without any judgment, allow any internal sensation to come up and be noticed. Maybe you can feel something in your chest, in your belly, in your hands or your feet. Just allowing whatever is there to just be present and you to be present with it. And if it starts to shift, just notice, no judgment, no needing to fix it. Just letting yourself breathe softly into these sensations. And then softly and gently fluttering your eyes open and coming back. Taking your time. And I'm just curious to hear a little bit in the chat how this experience was for you. And again, just a reminder that if it was difficult, if it was fun, it's all good. It's all welcome. Our body is always shifting, and sometimes just going into the body for some of us, even with like a good memory, can feel like a lot. My mind is racing. Relaxing, calming, yawning, joy, fuzzy, hopeful, tummy tuck. Yeah, so just see how like everyone has such different responses. It's really interesting, isn't it? It's really interesting. Yeah, calm, liberated, or difficulty to stay calm. My head went to a trauma memory. Anxious, calming. Yeah, but I breathe through it. Beautiful. Calm and then anxious. That really tends to happen a lot when we feel something good. We're like, no, 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 I don't know you. You're new. Go away. I'm done. And also notice how, sometimes really it's like going into the body, our body stores a lot of trauma. And so when we're not used to it, when we live a lot up here, it really can bring up a lot of memories. So that is very normal. So just a quick note about this practice of resourcing. Resourcing can be done in a lot of ways. It can be done with an object. It can be done thinking of a person that you feel very supported by, or an animal. It can be done with a memory like we just did. It can also be done with a place or an area in your body. So there's a lot of cool ways to do resourcing. And again, I recommend doing it when you're very slightly triggered, and you will work your way up to doing this when you're very triggered, right? But when our nervous system is very dysregulated, it can be difficult to use this practice to focus on our body at that moment. So there's other practices that I tend to recommend. So now going into healing work versus regulation versus coping. And I find this to be very, very fascinating. So healing work to me is really about emotions. It's about digesting an experience by digesting the emotion that was attached to it. And it's very, very tricky to do healing work when we're not regulated in our nervous system, because as you just noticed, many of you go into your body, which is where emotion is, because we can't think about an emotion. And then we're like up in our head and circling around, and it's really hard to stay with it because we're not regulated. And so we can feel an emotion from anxiety, or we can feel an emotion from regulation. And I'm sure we've all had both experiences. Maybe when we were really young, we were able to feel it from regulation, but we've all had both experiences. And when we can feel an emotion from regulation, it's life-changing, because we can actually digest it and transform the experience. We can actually process it fully. But a lot of people make this mistake, that they're like, okay, I'm gonna feel everything, feel all my feelings, but I'm like completely dysregulated, so I actually get re-traumatized. So we really want to first work on regulating. Yeah, Julie, it's you. Yep. So we really, really want to work on, first of all, regulating our nervous system, which I will, maybe I'll share now actually what that actually means, because maybe you're like, what is she talking about? Regulating our nervous system means that we can feel anxious and we can feel shut down, but we come out of it pretty quickly, right? Faster. We don't stay stuck in that zone for a long time. And when we're regulated, we're grounded. we feel like in our body, we feel present, we can stay with the sensations and emotions of our body, it doesn't necessarily mean that we feel really good. It doesn't. We can feel sad, we can feel angry, but we can stay with the experience. When we're dysregulated, we'll go into the mind, we'll use, all these defenses and coping mechanisms to get out of it. And so, coping mechanisms, I don't think that they're necessarily bad, right? And coping mechanisms can be quote unquote healthy or unhealthy, which honestly they kind of do the same thing, but it can range all the way from addictions to watching TV to working out to eating super, super healthy, right? It's kind of ways that we avoid processing things. And also like living our life, sometimes we don't have the capacity or the safety in our body to process things. And sometimes you just don't want to because we're just in the moment, we're having fun, like we're not in this healing mode. So this is where the work can be tricky. It's kind of finding a balance, right? As you work with your triggers, start to notice, do I feel exhausted or is this feeling good? Do I feel like, some of you said, I feel overwhelmed, exhausted. That is your body telling you not today or not anymore, like I'm done. And really listening to that because, the goal of this work is not just doing this work, but it's also how are you doing it? Because we can do it and get re-traumatized. Like in talk therapy, so many people get re-traumatized because they are talking and talking and talking out of this really anxious state. I see this in so many of my clients where they're just like, and this happened, and this happened. And I'm like, okay, I want to hear everything. And first, let's ground, right? And then after we ground, it's like a different human being. It's like so mind blowing. So really paying attention to kind of what you need when, and when do you need to mindlessly watch TV, right? So many of my friends, including people on this call, tell me like, I think you haven't mindlessly watched TV in a while. And I'm so grateful for that because sometimes I forget, and that is actually a trauma response, right? No, but I have to do this and this and this, and I have to process and I have to, right? Nothing is urgent. This is life. We're meant to live it. So it's okay to have fun and just take a break and just live. And then there are times when we feel like we have this capacity to process shit, right? So we have to listen to that. Cool. Yes. I'm glad that some of you are like resonating with this because I tended to do that for a really long time, just like go and process. And, it's very urgent and I need to clear all of this so that I can feel good. But that's not necessarily true. It's really, really about being true to what we need in the moment. So now we're going to do a really, I would say, cute and fun practice. It's called butterfly hug. And this is one of those regulating, super simple practices that actually works for me personally, right? It might, again, not work for you. So that's why in the online course, I offer like a million practices. So you can try all of them and be like, this is great for this, and this is great for this. And also moment to moment discernment, like something might work really well one moment and then not work the next moment. So this is called butterfly hug. And it comes from EMDR, which I'm sure some of you have heard of. And it's super simple. So you're going to take your two hands and just put them on your chest, crisscross. And if it helps you close your eyes, for me, it always helps me because I can actually like tap into my body. Don't close your eyes yet because I'm going to show you. So what we're going to do is we're going to tap and tap. And I want you to do this at the speed that works for you in your body and also at the pressure that works for you. So you can kind of play and see, do I need to tap harder, softer? What do we need? And just keep tapping like this. And as you tap your chest, shoulder, chest, really feel your body. Feel your belly, feel your chest. And see how this feels for you. Does this feel settling? Does this feel regulating to your system? just a few more seconds, just like this. Tapping your body, just noticing. You can just pause when you're ready, and would love for you to share with us how that felt for you. For me, it feels really, really grounding, like almost every single time. It just feels like I had this big breath, soothing. Yeah, me too. It feels like so soothing. That's awesome. Love that. Cool. More grounding. Energy down. Yeah, it's like settling, rushed, and then naturally and consciously slow down. Warm and cozy. Big breath. Isn't it nice? Oh, I love when that big breath comes through. It's my favorite. Very present. I love that feeling when you're like, oh, now I'm here. It's so awesome. I love that. Cool. So another quick little practice to keep in your back pocket. All right. So didn't notice anything. Yep, that's cool too. No worries. So now I'm going to share my screen because I'm having my social media, another Marina actually create this chart for me. But for now, I use this one because it's brilliant. And we're going to go through a little bit of polyvagal theory. And basically, these are the three states that I kept talking about, the three nervous system states. So I just wanted to show you this diagram and kind of break it down for you because I honestly feel like it's so helpful. It's so like it promotes compassion a lot for me personally. So this is a hierarchy. So that means that this is how our system works, right? One is not better than the other. It just means that this is how our system works, where we start one place and we go up the hierarchy, and in order to come back down, we go through this yellow part. So the first bottom part is ventral vagal, and vagal comes from vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve. So it goes all the way from the base of our skull in the back, all the way into all our organs into the body. And it actually brings 80% of information from the body to the brain. And that is why we do so much work that is somatic in the body that works, because the information is traveling from the body to the brain, not the other way around. Well, a majority of it. And so ventral vagal means safe, grounded, calm. It's a space where you feel connected to yourself and you also feel socially engaged. You're able to connect to other people. So that is the green piece right here. And it's interesting to note that it increases digestion, intestinal motility. So you can see like all these different things here that really affect your health, right? When you're in ventral, your health flourishes essentially. And the longer that you can stay in ventral, the better for your health. And so then we have sympathetic, the yellow piece. And that's really the fight or flight response, where we feel a sense of danger. We can feel rage, we can feel panic and anger and fear and anxiety and frustration. And as we're going through this, I also, and we're going to journal on this in a moment, but I want you to notice like the thoughts that come, right? What do they sound like from each of these states? It's really interesting because the thoughts actually inform us, oh, this is the state that I'm in. And then the last one at the top is freeze, which is dorsal vagal. And that's where we feel hopelessness, we feel trapped, we feel preparation for death, which is really important because essentially what happens is when we're in fight or flight, when we're like in this anxious energy and we're also in danger, right? Again, perceived danger or real danger, it really does not matter because it's your nervous system. Your nervous system doesn't say, oh, this is real danger. I know it. It always says it's real danger, even if there is no danger. When we're in this hyperarousal state and we feel like there's no resource to help us actually cope and move through it, that's where we go into freeze. And when you think of like an animal in the wild, right, that is getting chased, and say the lion catches the animal and the animal's like, I'm trapped, I'm done, like there's nowhere to go, it numbs itself so that, and this is a survival mechanism, there's no pain while being eaten. And that is why we feel so numb in our bodies, we feel shut down, we feel dissociated. It's all protective mechanisms. So I love just knowing this because it just like, it makes so much sense, and we can have more compassion when we go into this freeze state. And also, in order to come back to the green here, when we're in freeze, we need the sympathetic yellow piece, right? So we need a little bit of like energy. And then the last piece about this chart is that we need all of these. Like, it's not that one is better than the other. For example, with sympathetic, when you're going for a run, that's what you use, right? You use that sympathetic energy to go for a run. When you're in meditation, in that meditative state, you use some of that freeze energy, right? You use that dorsal vagal energy. The tricky thing is to really learn to move through this chart quicker so that we don't get stuck in freeze. We don't feel numb like that. We're always going to go in all of these states. We just want to learn to not be so rigid, not to get stuck in one state. And that's the main part of it. Is there a question in the chat? It's like a cycle. Yeah. Yep. It's definitely a cycle. So this is the chart. Let me put a link in the chat for all of you because I'm going to ask you a question in a moment about this. So what else did I want to share? Oh, just real quick about, again, about the window of tolerance. So again, regulation, the goal is not, and I share this because honestly, this was me. I was like, okay, I'm going to fix all my issues and then I'm going to be like constantly happy. Everything's going to go really well. And I'm just always going to feel like calm and present and perfect. And that was like my trauma, or part of my trauma response, very black and white. But that is not the goal of regulation. Actually, the goal of regulation is, again, that smooth movement between the states. And then also this concept of Dr. Dan Siegel, which is the window of tolerance, to expand that window. And that means that things happen to us and they don't overwhelm us. We actually don't go into freeze. We don't go into shutdown. It doesn't mean those things don't affect us. They affect us. They can make us feel sad or angry or all these different emotions. Maybe for a moment we're like, oh my God, what do I do? This feels, overwhelming, or I feel a little shut down. But then we gather, we're like, okay, I have resources. I'm resourced. I can deal with this. And that is the window of tolerance. And we want to constantly expand it. And when it comes to triggers, the window of tolerance expands when there's a trigger that's very similar to an old trigger that you've had, but it does not have the same effect on you. It has a smaller effect, and you can still stay in your body, stay present, and deal with this trigger. So I hope that that all makes sense. If it doesn't, please write down your question so that we can address it at the end. And I'm going to ask you some questions to journal on. I'm going to put them in the chat, and you have your chart as well. So here we go. Here are the questions. And what I want you to do is think of a mildly triggering event that happened to you recently. And when I say mild, not like a 10 out of 10, but like, maybe you were slightly annoyed or you slightly felt like hopeless about it or helpless. And I want you to kind of check in about what nervous system state you were in. Were you in the yellow zone? Were you in the red zone? And how can you tell what was happening? What were your thoughts like? What was your body like? How could you tell? And then if you were in ventral, so that's that green zone, what would your thoughts sound like? So let me give you an example if this is not clear, just in case. This is one I like to use because a lot of my clients tell me this one. Let's say you walk into your house and it's a mess. It's just like a crazy mess. Everybody's running around. It's madness, right? If you are in sympathetic, so that yellow, anxiety, fight or flight, it might sound like oh my God, I'm so angry. Like, who made this mess? This is ridiculous. This needs to get fixed, right? That's the yellow zone. And how do I know? Maybe I have like a lot of energy, kind of like urgency to like clear it up, and that kind of very chaotic energy in my body. Maybe I feel a lot of anger and frustration. If I am in dorsal, the red zone, my thoughts could sound like, ah, this is forever going to look like this. My house is never going to be better. Like, it's never going to get fixed. And it's so hopeless, right? And the emotions that are coming with this is kind of that sadness, maybe, the hopelessness, the helplessness, like I can't do anything about this. And we also can feel numb in our body. We can feel like shut down in our body. Maybe it's like hard to actually feel, sense our body. So that's an example. And take a few moments to kind of journal on this. And when you've got your example, let me know in the chat. And if you have questions also, please, this will be a good time to put them in the chat. Okay, awesome examples, everyone. I love that. So what did I want to address? Oh, Monique, I really like your example because I love all of your examples, but I just wanted to share that it's really interesting how if we come into a situation, it's not always that the situation creates that nervous system state. We can come into the situation already in a state, right? And then it just explodes, because oftentimes also when we feel safe with a certain person, we just allow everything to like explode with that person, which I'm going to talk about right now. So really excellent examples. Isabel, I love how you said that your therapist actually helped you because you felt really helpless to get some of that sympathetic energy and to do something about the situation. So you can see how sympathetic doesn't have to be bad, right? Yes, exactly. Anger is such a powerful thing. Like it's whenever, I have clients who are in shutdown, we really work on that anger. And there was a question about kind of oscillating between the two, the yellow and the red. And I think that's, that's super, super common. It's almost like your body is trying to get into ventral. It's like trying to go out of numbness, but underneath the numbness, there is a lot of survival energy, right? So what happens is we're numb, and then we climb out of that numbness, we get into the survival energy. And usually if you get thrown back into the numbness, it's usually because the survival response needs to be played out. So this is getting a little complex, but I'll just address it, that if you've had a trauma where you felt extremely helpless and you couldn't do anything, that survival response gets trapped in your body. So your body maybe wanted to run or fight and you didn't, didn't have the opportunity to. And so what happens is you need to play that out. And I've played so many of these out with my therapist in a very safe space. And then there's this relaxation that happens into ventral. So I'm glad that makes sense. Let me just see. I feel like I almost always just go into fight or flight. Yeah. So Deb Dana, who is one of the founders of polyvagal theory, talks about our home away from home, which is like our go-to state. And it's so interesting because I used to go to freeze. Me too, Liz. I used to go to freeze for so long, and then I worked through a lot of freeze, and then it became fight or flight. And I was like, do I prefer freeze? But I don't. I definitely don't. It was no picnic, but definitely now my go-to response is fight or flight. Yeah. Okay, we are on time. This feels, I'm like so proud. I kind of did like little rehearsals and I like timed myself because I usually go way over time. So I'm really excited. So we're going to go into a quick practice. Mo, you're here. I didn't see you. Yay. We're going to go into a practice that is called the VU. Who has heard of the mighty VU? Let me know in the chat. Love VU. Yay. It's the best. Some of us might feel like it's very weird. Cool. A lot of you have. Some of us might feel like it's strange at first, and that's okay. But we're all, yes, somatic therapists do it, and it's really amazing. Side note, important side note, sometimes when we do this practice, it can actually bring up all the stuff that's underneath, all the emotions. And so if you kind of feel like I'm kind of already triggered, or, I'm not in a ventral state right now, maybe you want to just observe. Or maybe you want to do one round with us and then see how you feel, and then maybe it doesn't feel good and you just ground yourself for a while. So the VU is super simple. It's almost like chanting in yoga. It's your cat's freaked out. That's hilarious. My cat's sleeping over there, but I feel like she's like out, so nothing can wake her up. So the VU needs to come from deep in your belly, and it's like a deep VU sound, like as deep as you can make it. And you might want to put your hand on your belly to actually like feel that vibration. And what's cool about it is that it actually also regulates your digestion. I find it super helpful to regulate my nervous system to come out of both freeze and anxiety. But you might find it totally unhelpful or different, like there's no like this is the practice for XYZ. So just keep that in mind. So we're gonna VU together 3 times, and we're gonna just gonna have fun. We're going to, there's many versions of the VU, but one of my favorites is actually with the jaw, and it's kind of like releasing the jaw. So it's gonna look super funny, but it's all good. What we're gonna do is on the third round, we'll do like 2 regular VUs. And by the way, you go VU until you run out of air. And then you take a breath in, just spontaneous breath, and then VU again. And on the third round, we're gonna work with our jaw. So what I want you to do is just kind of play with like opening, kind of, you know, moving your jaw, but not like forcing it, just kind of stretching your jaw. And what's interesting is that we store a lot of anger in the jaw. So notice if anger comes up for you as you do this. So this is what it's gonna look like, the third one. It's gonna look like this. Okay, so it looks funny, but it's amazing. So get yourself settled in. You can close your eyes, you can keep them open, you can close your video if you feel awkward, but just know that no one's looking at you. Everybody's VUing. And we're gonna take a breath in and VU. And breath in. Now we're gonna do our cool jaw one. As you complete the third round, just keeping your eyes closed and noticing your body. Just notice what's coming up for you. Maybe it's a sense of awakeness. Maybe it's sleepiness. Just get curious. Just get curious. Tune into your belly, your solar plexus, your chest. Just notice your body. Really stay with the sensation. Focus on the sensation in your body. And also notice how sensations kind of start to shift and build on one another, and nothing is really stagnant in our bodies. There's always transformation and change. So just tracking whatever it comes up. Surprising. So whenever you become ready, feel free to share. Surprising. So what do you mean? I felt like I was a cat purring. That's so cute. I love that. Yeah, I feel like I'm a lion. Oh, that is so cool. Mom, I didn't even know you had a dog. That's awesome. Feels good. Nauseous. Yeah, chills. Yeah. Vibration. Tingling, energized, awake. Jamila, that's really cool that you were energized. I love that. Vibration, strength, calm, alerty. My cat freaked out. Calm and peachy. My jaw feels a little more loose. Very cool. It was calming. So see, notice how it's like different for everyone, right? And we really want to be aware of that. How not only it's different for everyone, but also if one time it was one way for you, it doesn't mean the next time is going to be exactly the same. So that's kind of what people can find tricky about this work. And it's about attuning, which brings me to our next little bit here. So before we go there, let's take a big stretch. Oh, it feels so good. Just let your body do whatever it needs to do. Maybe you need to get up. Maybe you need a glass of water. Where's my water? Oh, I left my water. Oh, well. So now we're going to go into our last little bit here, which is about emotions. And I mentioned the word attunement, and this is something that I really took in from my last coach, who was amazing. Her name is Serena, and you can find her at Mindful Tricks. I just love her. She's amazing. Curious how many of you have, I always post her stuff, so some of you may have like seen her. So attunement is about giving ourselves what we need in every given moment. And very often we, kind of are in this rat race in life, whether it's with work or just like accomplishment after accomplishment. We really don't notice our body. We don't notice what we need. We don't pause. And if you don't pause, it's quite impossible to know what you need in your body. So attunement is very, very healing, because our parents, that was actually their job, is to attune to what we needed in every moment. But they probably didn't, right? Because they're human, they're not perfect. And so we get to kind of reparent ourselves and give that to ourselves. And I want to talk about emotions now. And again, I really feel like this is a very unique piece of the work that I bring into the world, especially this distinction of needing to do emotional processing when we're regulated, and also how the heck to do, like how to feel. A while ago, the holistic psychologist on Instagram, Nicole, she posted about what is it called? CEN, childhood emotional neglect. Yeah, CEN. And it's basically when your parents didn't really give you the tools to cope with your emotions, to soothe yourself, to know what to do with emotions. And honestly, I feel like it's probably all of us, because our parents didn't know how to do this, like especially in their generation, it was just really missing. And so maybe you observed them not very, gracefully moving through their emotion, or maybe they just didn't show up for you as well. Those are both kind of misattunement experiences. And when we have trauma, or when we go through anything traumatic, again, anything that feels overwhelming, what happens is a lot of emotion comes up, right? Like maybe it's anger, maybe it's sadness, maybe it's disgust, all these different things. Could be even, both joy and sadness, like all of this just ball of emotion. But we're very busy surviving. We're not processing emotion when we're going through trauma. And so in those moments, our body is really focused on surviving, and we don't get that chance of processing the emotion. And also, yeah, busy surviving. Exactly. And also those emotions can really become very threatening. And I found that there is almost like this category of emotions that I like to call trauma emotions that come up that are so intense. And you might have felt this, or you might have felt it for a split second and then shut down because it was so intense. And those are emotions that are built up during trauma that are in our body. They live here, they haven't been processed, and we don't know how to deal with them. And they're also blocking us from really being alive, from really experiencing life, right? So the healing work is to have a new experience with emotion. It's not just processing emotion. It's to have this experience where your body and your brain knows that you are safe. You are no longer in trauma. And you can feel fear, and you can feel sadness, and you can feel anger, and you can feel disgust, and you can feel all these things, and even joy, because a lot of us have a hard time holding joy in our body for a long time. You can feel all that stuff and you're safe. Like you can move through it, right? So that's really, to me, what healing truly is, because once we move through that, we get into the state of just connection and presence, and it feels amazing. Um, and if we don't, these emotions get stuck in our body, and they really get ignited when we're triggered. They get hardcore ignited, so hard that we cannot avoid them. And we usually lash out at other people. But it's not very sexy to talk about emotions, right? So a lot of us kind of avoid that. And I feel like kind of the whole coaching, not the whole, but like a big chunk of the coaching industry doesn't talk about emotions. Even therapists, like, because we're people and all people are kind of scared of emotions. So this is really crucial and important work that is getting avoided, and that I feel like when we address it, there's so much benefit. And as I mentioned in that example of like the baby crying, the mom, having a hard day and not attuning and not soothing the child, that's where trauma gets built up, and shame, and all these emotions that we then don't know what to do with. Babies and children are really, really susceptible to trauma. And because when these emotions get built up, they really don't know what to do with them. They have no idea what to do with them. They don't know how to process them. They don't have the tools. They don't have the resourcefulness. And if no one comes to soothe the baby, what happens is the baby builds defenses, and we kind of move through life with those defenses. And those defenses are obviously adaptations, like procrastination. It's an adaptation. It serves something. It protects us, but it's also highly unhelpful because we want to do things in our life. So there's like two sides of that coin. And a lot of people think that they can solve things like overthinking or procrastination, or all these little behaviors that we have and we want to shift through the behavior, but we can't. We have to shift it through the body and through emotion, feeling the emotion underneath it. And I'm going to say something that may trigger some of you. It was definitely very eye-opening for me to learn this, that so many of us are still babies when it comes to emotions. And what I mean by that is that we still kind of make someone else, maybe it's our partner or a friend, our parent. And that means that we still depend on them to soothe us. We think that it's their job. Like, I'm angry, you made me angry, so make me not angry, right? And that's what our parents do for us when we're little, when we're tiny, right? We don't know how to soothe ourselves, and they soothe us. That's our job. If they didn't, we continue the cycle. We continue depending on another human to soothe us. And that creates a lot of issues in relationships, a lot of triggers and mismatches and arguments that just go in cycles. Until we learn that we are literally the only ones. Yeah, it's so huge. We're the only ones that are in charge of moving through our emotions. We're adults now, right? We're no longer 5 or 8 or 10. Like, we're adults, and this is our job. It's not somebody else's job. And there are kind of two relationships with emotions that I see. One of them is to completely avoid, numb out, right? And that's really like that freeze state. I don't have emotions. That was me for a long time. I don't have emotions. I'm good. I'm just always like flat. Or to really merge with them. And of course, we can have both at the same time. To merge with them, meaning I'm so angry and this is all there is and I can't get out of it, and everyone needs to take care of me because I'm angry and take away my anger. And that's, as you can hear in my tone, this is the anxious energy. And once we actually, yep, it was me too. Both of them, both of them. There's so much shame, right? There's so much shame around this because this is what I call my inner asshole. When she comes out, I'm just like, oh my God, like who is that person? Why? But it's in all of us. And if you think that you're by yourself, you're not, because we all have them. They're all there. Um, and the cool thing is, truly, I believe that when we learn to move through emotions, it's liberating. It's life changing. Like I have seen it in my own life where all of a sudden I'm like a grown up adult with my partner and we're actual equals. Like we each take care of our personal emotion. And of course, we can share it. We can share it with one another and we can ask each other for support and all these things. But the energy behind it is not the energy of, I like to make that sound because I feel like it's so true. I'm mad and you made me mad, right? It's literally like a 5-year-old. And so it's so amazing when you just say, I'm angry and I'm gonna go like take care of that inside of me, right? It's a different story. And I wanted to show you really quick something really awesome that is called the change triangle. I'm gonna share, where's my share screen? Disappeared on me. Share screen. So this is the change triangle. And honestly, this was like life-changing for me to learn by Hilary Jacobs Handel, who I just love. And basically, at the bottom of the triangle, we have these core emotions: fear, anger, sadness, disgust, joy, excitement, and sexual excitement. And we can have, all the different emotions truly at the bottom here. Oh, let me make this bigger. And we also have defenses and inhibitory emotions. And those are things that prevent us from feeling our core emotions. So defenses can be procrastination, it can be being vague, sarcasm, making jokes of everything, all these different mechanisms that we use to avoid feeling. And for the inhibitory side, we have anxiety, guilt, and shame. And when we actually move through this top of the triangle and we move into the core emotions and we actually are resourced enough to move through our core emotions, we get this open-hearted state of the authentic self, which is amazing. And it feels calm and curious and connected and compassionate and confident, all the C words, courageous and clear. So it's really, really incredible. This is the change triangle. And so we're going to, and just the last thing is, emotions really last for 90 seconds. And I remember when I heard that and I was like, no, they don't. They last forever. It's not true. They last forever because we go into the defense mechanisms. This is why they last forever. So we'll go into thinking or, we'll avoid. Example of moving through the change cycle. Yes, I will. So, for example, you notice yourself, you notice an emotion coming up, right? And maybe you notice yourself feeling it for a second and then starting to think and think and think and think and think, right? I do this a lot. I notice it, and that is just a defense, right? So in that moment, what I would do is I would actually regulate my nervous system. Once I regulate my nervous system, I will check in. Do I feel resourced enough to be with this emotion that's coming up for me? If I am, I will feel it and I will let it move through my body. And, there's all these kinds of different, those defense mechanisms, right? And maybe it's procrastination. It's actually asking yourself, how do I feel under that procrastination? Often it's a lot of sadness. Can I just sit here and can I feel the sadness? And then maybe you notice that as you want to go into the sadness, something blocks you. And that can be the shame, guilt, and anxiety. Maybe you start feeling anxious. You start feeling really, really anxious, right? Or shut down as well. And that's kind of a defense again, right? An inhibitory emotion is what she calls it, but it's essentially like a way to defend yourself against feeling. So this is literally everything that is, that we've been talking about, this whole process of moving through it. Once you learn to move through an emotion, actually stay with it when you're regulated, it only lasts for 90 seconds, which is pretty cool. So Kara, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Let's see. Do you have for judgment against our emotions? So I feel like that's it's complex, right? And I know that I had, a lot of women, for example, have a lot of judgment against anger, and a lot of men can have judgment against sadness, right? Or like being vulnerable. And so it's really about kind of researching where that comes from. And for me, it's been very helpful to see like, oh, I had a lot, like my parents never were sad. It was like it didn't exist. And there was all this judgment. And so when I started to unpack this in my own family, how are my parents with this? And we're going to, this is in the online course as well, like these questions kind of unpack how were your parents around this. Then you can really start to be more compassionate because you can see like, this is not the ultimate truth that sadness is bad or sexual excitement is bad or anger is bad. It's more like, this is what I learned. Okay, I see a lot of questions. So before I address them, and I promise I'll come back to it, I'm going to share with you a little bit about this really awesome online course that I am creating for you. So let me share the screen, and then we will come back to all of the questions. So treasures and the trigger, regulating, healing, and living fully alive. And the course is all about regulating your nervous system, accessing your emotions, healing trauma, and experiencing aliveness and presence in your life. Now, I'm still in the creation process. I have the entire curriculum ready to go, but I am going to be filming. And so the whole course will be available actually on February 13th. And so you get early bird pricing, which is exciting for everybody who's in the masterclass. So the message of this course is this: no matter how much trauma, pain, and heartache you've ever experienced, and how triggers feel just like so charged for you and so difficult for you, I really, really, truly believe that aliveness, liberation, and presence are all available for you. And this course is really giving you kind of a step-by-step, but like it's a step-by-step, it's the roadmap that you saw in the beginning, but also like, obviously we're all different and there's a lot in there about kind of making this your own way to use triggers as portals to healing and liberation. And I'm so excited because I really feel like this course is like my life's true mission, because it contains kind of all the practices and the tools and the skills and the meditations and all this cool stuff that I have gathered over the last lifetime for me, essentially in one place. And if you feel like feeling good is not possible, because that is how I felt for so long, like truly, I felt like it's not possible for me to feel good. And that, we're always going to feel doomed, and we're always going to feel stuck and disconnected. And maybe you tried like talk therapy or all these like more like mental things and they didn't work. I really think that this course can really, really support you. And yeah, I've gathered years of my own growth and learning and embodiment through this course. It's entirely self-paced. So that means that on the 13th of February, you get access to all of it. You can move through it at your own pace. There is no live component. So that means this does not include anything live with me. It's literally just you at your own pace, watching these lectures as many times as you'd like and all that good stuff. I'm going to go through the curriculum in a moment. So what's included? You have a whole bunch of video modules that essentially walk through nervous system and its regulation, trauma and healing, transforming your relationship with emotions and sensations. And again, you're going to get access to all of it and you go through it at your own pace. It includes a ton of guided meditations to release emotions and rewire behaviors. It includes journaling prompts to reflect on your relationship with your nervous system and your emotions. It also includes a ton of somatic practices and kind of how to use them and when, so you can tailor it to you to really like process trauma and stuck emotions. And this is what I believe that you're going to walk away with, a roadmap for using triggers for their treasures, because I really believe they are, and wisdom in your life so that you can really like tap into your aliveness, which is so exciting, and understanding of what triggers are and where trauma comes from and the connection between them really, really deeply. I'm going to go in depth into all this stuff. A new compassionate and effective way to approach anxiety, shutdown, procrastination. So all those mechanisms that I just talked about that people think this is just behavior, this is going to be a real understanding of that with so much compassion. And then the steps to build capacity in your body so that you can feel safer, you can experience safety in your body. Practices to regulate your nervous system so you can create a more flexible system. And then and not get stuck in those freeze shutdown states. And then emotional healing tools to actually feel your emotions, because I know it's like so tricky. This is going to walk you through that with different meditations and practices. So the course for early bird is $333, and then after, in 3 days, you basically have 3 days to grab the sale, and then it's going to go up to $555. Or you can also do payments. So that's the pricing for the course. That's just a little bit about me. You're going to get this link. Don't stress. You can think about it. You can feel into it. If it's right for you, you've got 3 days. You're going to get emails with more kind of tips and information, and then the link to this. And just to go through the curriculum, which honestly, I always believe it's like, it's important, but it's more like what you're actually getting out of it, right? But this is the curriculum. So this is all going to be, once it's like recorded and everything, it's going to have videos, it's going to have like attachments, like sound bites and meditations, it's going to have PDFs of journaling prompts, all that good stuff. So it's going to start with some tips for going through the course, and then my journey as well. And honestly, the tips for going through this course is some of my favorite stuff, because I'm really going to go into survival responses and how we tend to do things, like in general, courses, or just how we tend to get support, and how we can kind of shift that. Then it's going to have that awesome roadmap that I showed you in the beginning, which I keep adding to it like all the time. I'm like creating and creating this, to really perfect it in a way. Well, it's never going to be perfect, but just adding to it. And then triggers and trauma, so trauma in the body and trauma responses in daily life, which is super important. Kind of how does that survival energy show up in our life? And then about trauma and emotions, so we're going to go through those defenses, like procrastination and overthinking and people pleasing, all those things that we do in order not to essentially feel what's underneath. And then shame, guilt, and anxiety, which are the inhibitory emotions. What are they? How can we move through them in order to actually feel? And then what are trauma emotions? So those very, very intense emotions from the past that once we move through that, I forgot to mention, starting to feel in your daily life will be much less intimidating. Then we're going to go through the nervous system states, the polyvagal theory, and your window of tolerance. And then healing versus regulation versus coping, the differences between them and when to use each of the tools, safety and capacity. So like how to build safety in your body, how to have capacity. And then we go into practices. So we go into first regulating practices. It's going to be a ton in here, just all kinds of different ways that you can actually regulate your system through the body. And then healing practices. So this is really about that emotional healing and how that all works out and how we can feel our different emotions and move through them. And then, only then, we go into the mental processing of triggers, journaling questions, just reflection, and then shifts in behavior. So that is the course. Super exciting. I'm going to put the link for those of you that are like, I want it now. Here you go. Again, you will also get, I'm so glad, would it work well in conjunction with one-on-one? So actually, currently my one-on-one is closed for registration, but definitely if you are doing one-on-one with someone else, definitely this would work really, really, really well. And I'm actually gifting it to all my one-on-one clients as a resource. So if you are a one-on-one client and you're on this call, don't buy the course. I'm currently living at home and feel like my parents' presence is enough to send me. Okay, so we're going into questions, by the way. So if you already asked the question, and let me stop share. If you already asked the question and I missed it, please put it again in the chat. I'm currently living at home and feel like my parents' presence is enough to send me into shutdown and where I want to avoid everything. Is healing possible in this environment? That's a great question. Yes and no. It's really like noticing if you can build safety in that environment. And it really differs from person to person because healing, the basis of healing is safety. So can you build that safety? And can you, this is a really cool kind of like trick, I guess, for our nervous system in a space to actually start to notice cues of safety. So as you're in that house, maybe your parents are a cue of danger to your system, right? But maybe there's cues of safety. Like maybe you have some childhood, like really cozy memories that you can tap into and ground into your body so that your body can feel a sense of safety. So just notice that. How would we get support if we were needing it? I'm assuming you're talking in terms of the course. So the course does not come with support. And I will also talk in the course about when would you need one-on-one support? If you're going through the course and XYZ is happening for you, I recommend getting one-on-one support. Not all of you will need it, so it really depends. I feel like a lot of times when you regulate with someone like me, like a lot of people tell me, like, I watch your videos and I feel like it's regulating. That can be super helpful even in an online course. So I really believe that I believe this course will benefit all of you. Like, honestly, I would not sell it or create it if I didn't. And some of you can kind of transform even faster with one-on-one support. And when that is you feel this intense resistance. Like you're moving through the course and it's just resistance, like nothing's landing, it's just this intense resistance. That is where I recommend getting one-on-one support. Okay, how long did it take you to get to this place of being able to regulate your emotions without going into defenses? So let me clarify. I am not perfect. I still go into defenses, right? I go way less into defenses. And I'm way more able to stay with my emotion. But of course, sometimes I do. Like sometimes I'll start overthinking. I'm just very skilled at now being like, I'm overthinking. I clearly have resistance to feel right now. What do I need? Do I need to regulate and then I can still feel? Do I need to just pause this right now, right? So it's this discernment that I have to be able to kind of move with my body and not against it. And that's really the goal of this. I have been in somatic experiencing therapy for like 3 years, probably. So that's that. And that's kind of when I started somatic work. But everybody's different. Everybody's going to have a different process. So just keep that in mind. Big love to you too, Kara. Sometimes I go into a room alone and get on the floor with a blanket and pillows. I really love that. I love that. Yes. I have a big like beanbag chair that I'm obsessed with, and it's like so helpful. You mentioned some of us know what we have to do, but we don't get things done. How would we go about that? Also, does long distance running or overworking out get you stuck in fight or flight? Great questions. So I really believe that we don't do it. Usually, number one, Monique, perhaps you've been using your mind a lot in your journey. Like you've been trying to think through it. And I don't know if that resonates, but that was definitely my experience of using my mind. Like, how can I get out of this? Let me think. What can I do? Okay, maybe I can get up earlier tomorrow. Maybe I can do more things. Maybe very common for men also. I was very much like in this masculine energy, like I'm gonna push through it. I'm gonna like do more marketing. I'm gonna, even when I was writing the sales page, I was like, okay, should I look for this course? Should I look up like best practices for a sales page? And then I was like, absolutely not. I'm literally going to just do whatever the hell I want. Like, this is my business. I'm just going to speak from my heart. Okay, here we go. And I did it in like 2 hours. So I just noticed that, that response is like, I need to push through this and overthink and, do the thing. So that was definitely big. Another piece of it is, just doing a lot of talk therapy or talking or journaling. Even journaling can really come from a trauma response and just perpetuate the trauma response. And then how to move through it is to feel. Again, it's to feel. It's like feel what's under the procrastination. It's to feel what is that overthinking part of you. This is also something that I'm going to put in the course, is a little bit on parts work, like that part of you that wants to overthink. How old is it? What does it need? Where does it come from? Right? So those are that. And long distance running, it's really noticing your body. I know that very often I will work out and it will really help me feel less anxious, but not for long term. It just helps in that moment because I'm moving that energy, but I'm not connected to the energy. I'm just like doing the motions, but I'm not actually connected to my emotions when I'm working out. At least I'm like that. So it's a great thing to do. It can be fun. It can be great for the moment. I don't think it's necessarily healing long term. So I hope that answered the question. Okay. Other questions. I totally can relate with being in masculine energy in work mode. Yep. There's hope and you can get to a place of healing. Oh, I love that you're sharing that, Julie. That's beautiful. And I really, really resonate with that so much, that there's always hope and you can always heal. And like, honestly, I was so dysregulated. Like, I can't even tell you. I was so like every little thing would dysregulate me, like people saying a similar name to my ex-boyfriend who was abusive would dysregulate me. Seeing a color that reminded me of him, just everything. And when I say dysregulate, I mean, I was in my bed for a week, just like not functioning. So I believe that there's hope for all of us. I want to suggest MMA workouts. Oh, I like it. So here is the point, Kara. It's very interesting. What I find is that when you're actually connected to the rage, you're not like in your head. You're not thinking, I am angry, so I'm going to, do this thing. But you're actually connected to your body, to the feeling, the sensation of rage, and you're doing it, then absolutely, I think it's so healing. If you're in your head and you're like taking out the energy, it doesn't work. Do some traumas feel like dreams? Can you say more about that, Monique? I'm not sure what you mean. I often feel fatigue. I could sleep 7 hours and after working 4 hours, I could sleep again. That's a typical trauma response. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is definitely the freeze, right? The freeze response. So think about it. It's like your system is in survival, right? And survival takes a lot of energy. Like we don't want to live in that energy all the time. So that energy of survival is going and going and going. And it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. And so we feel like we need to sleep and we just shut down. So that's really, really huge. Okay, what's the best way to process rage? Sometimes I feel like I want to smash everything, but obviously can't let it out. So again, it's to really connect with the emotion, which requires to first regulate your system. So from that regulated space, and doing the regulation work, and the course I believe will be so, so helpful for this for you, you can then get in touch with that in your body, the anger, the rage in your body. And then you can express it out. And that can include beating pillows, it can include pushing the wall, it can include a whole bunch of kind of imagining or doing it. So that's also going to be in the course, like the little practices that you can do. But what a lot of people miss, and even teachers, is you need to connect to it. You can't just think, I think I'm angry. You know, you need to feel it. And if you're not regulated, you can't feel your body. So you really, really need to feel it first. Okay, I started my dark night of the soul journey in August. I was shortly thereafter diagnosed with OCD. I believe this is due to resurfacing of big and little trauma, T traumas. Do you believe this process can help heal not only the trauma, but the OCD? I've never worked with anyone who has OCD except for my mom, but I didn't really work with my mom. But I know it helps her a lot. So I've never worked with anyone that specifically has OCD. I believe that it definitely can, because of course, you know, OCD is very trauma driven. So I definitely believe that, but I've never worked with anyone who has experienced it. Sometimes I think back and think about traumatic things and remember things, but I don't know if it was real or a dream. Okay, so Monique, that's an amazing question because it doesn't matter. And that's why it doesn't matter if it's real or a dream. And I know like part of us like really wants to know. And it doesn't matter because some of this can be from when you were a baby, right? And it's stored in your body. It's actually stored in your body. So when you do this work, it's really cool because you don't need to know the story. You just work through it somatically with different practices. And you don't need to know the specific story of it. So that's the really cool thing. And a lot of you can relate. Okay. Wringing a towel. I love that for anger. Yeah, Wanda, that's awesome. Sometimes, okay. I need to leave. Apologies. You're welcome. No problem. I've been tripping on that for so long. Yeah, that's body memory. Those dream-like states, that's actually body memory. And even if it's not exactly, you know, what happened, that's a trauma, even if you imagined it. So it's something to work through to feel more liberation. Other questions? Okay, I'm glad, Jamina. It's so nice to see you here. Other questions, don't be shy. If you've already asked it, I'm sure I missed it. So just like write it again. Do you have a wait list for one-on-one? Yes, I do. It's in my Instagram bio. So go for that. Common with PTSD, dream or real? Yeah, totally. Also questions about the course, if you have them. Do you know if Kundalini yoga actually will help? You know, again, it's so individual. I know it's frustrating to hear me say that, and I remember being frustrated with those answers. So I will try to kind of, yoga helps me as well. Here's the interesting thing. I used to do yoga in the past and actually get more dysregulated by it because I was completely disconnected from my body. I was in my head the whole time and I was just moving, you know, and I was like, okay, I'm moving, so it feels good to move because I have all this anxiety, but I was not in my body. That is the difference. And it's so amazing to me how now I'll do yoga and I can like cry in the middle of yoga. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel this release. Like I feel so good. So it's like the same practice that you do can be completely different. It's so, so cool when you're actually connected to your body. So it's really good stuff. Yeah, magic, totally. EMDR. I can never say what it stands for. If anyone knows, please feel free to share it. But it's basically something desensitization. It's like the longest acronym, but it's a type of therapy that is also somatic that works with kind of both sides of your brain to process trauma memories. And it can be really, really effective for PTSD. I love that you cried during yoga. That's awesome. Yes, thank you, Mo. It's so long. Couldn't they have found a simpler name? Seriously. Yeah, but definitely something to try. A lot of, yeah, Alyssa, so you've tried it. A lot of people have tried EMDR with great success, so that's really cool. Other questions? So many practices for yoga. Kundalini apparently kicks your back in your sympathetic state. Oh, kicks you back, you probably meant. So I'm just wondering and careful. Yes, yes, I have had that experience. Oh, Ashley, that's exciting. I have had that experience with breath work where I was like doing breath work and I was like, okay, this is going to be great. You know, I've heard great things about breath work. Cool. And I was so shut down. Like I went into shutdown. And then the teachers were like, keep going, push through it. And I was like, okay, you know, like continuing. And it just like further pushed me into shutdown. And this is why I say that I'm trauma informed. It's so crucial, this piece, because there's so many practitioners out there that just tell you to override your body. And you should never do that. You should really listen to your body. And we forget that because we're like so trained to do what we're told. But really, if you override the kind of impulses of your body, it's gonna be re-traumatizing. So Kundalini can be, you know, every single thing you do can be re-traumatizing. It just depends how you're feeling with it, right? How you're approaching it. And that's why I said like the tips in the course might be my favorite part, because it's so important how you actually approach things that you do. You know, if you take that course and you're like, okay, that course is going to save me. It's like, okay, I'm finally going to be fine because I'm broken and I need to be fixed. It's probably not going to do anything for you. And so, you know, I really feel that now in my life, I really embody that, like that shift into, I don't need to be saved because I'm already good. I have things to work on because I'm a human, but I don't need to be saved. And none of you need to be saved. And I'm not going to save you. You're going to save yourself. You know, you're going to support yourself. And everything that I share is just a suggestion. It's just a practice. Oh, I'm so glad this was life changing. I love that. I'm going to save that. I'm going to print screen your beautiful comment. And by the way, I would really appreciate all of you guys, if you and girls, if you share with me how this was, if you post about it anywhere and just share your experience, I'd really appreciate it. Marcy, I'm so glad. Other questions? Anyone questions? Oh, Kara, that's beautiful. Thank you. As are you. I loved all your questions and your participation. Oh, David, I saw that and then I skipped over it. Sorry. Recently, I've been committing to somatic practice and it's been super powerful. I felt my feelings, yay, let them flow and move through me. But this past week and at different times, I've completely lost the spaciousness and feel like I'm backtracking. Yes, that I love that question. So I really feel like you're actually progressing. That's what I feel, because when we have a lot of spaciousness, all of a sudden a lot of shit comes up. It's like, now I have capacity. Oh, now I understand how sad and angry and shut down I actually was, you know, and because your body can handle it. And so all of this stuff starts to come up and you're like, whoa, like what's wrong? Is something wrong with me? And the truth is that you actually build capacity in your system. So this is why I kind of learned to teach in this way, because I learned it on myself, that it took me like 2 years to actually build capacity in my nervous system. And then I started to feel stuff. And I was like, what? Like, why am aren't I supposed to be just happy? But I wasn't. I mean, I was, you know, also, but then I was like sad and I was shut down and I was mad and all these things. But finally, I could actually feel it. And even if you just feel shut down, that's not bad. You know, we're in a pandemic, like life happens, everything is happening, and we're gonna go through all this stuff. And it's really about, how do you meet yourself in those situations? How do you talk to yourself? How are you being with yourself? You know, it's never gonna be perfect. And there's this part of us that's just like, I'm entitled for this to be perfect. Like life should be perfect. And I have that part too. Like, what? I'm a coach. I'm supposed to be perfect. And then I just remind myself, I'm also human. I also like have struggles and they teach me things. So it's that reminder that none of us is perfect. Yay, David. I'm so happy to hear. I'm experiencing the same thing. I think I'm more open and new memories have come up. Exactly. It's like things that we suppress, and we all have so much of that we suppress, and they start to come up, and it's not bad. It really does show us that we can handle it, because our body suppresses things when we need for them to be suppressed, and then brings them up when they need to come up. That's what I believe, at least. Yeah, it's progress, totally. Does anyone else have a question before we hop off? Don't be shy. Your question is never a bad question. Oh my gosh, Liz, I relate. Yep, my partner has been one of the biggest growth catalysts of ever, because he's like my safe space. So my inner asshole just comes out freely. It's great. So I've had to really learn that I am not to put my crap on him, and I actually have to take care of myself. EFT, no. I think it's great. I've done a little bit of it and it's awesome, but I don't use it in my work. But I'm sure I will, because I'm always like learning more and more. I'm very, I love it. Thank you, Jamina. I love you. I believe he's a growth catalyst for me too. Represents safety and love in this. Yes, Liz, that's so big. It's like, those positive emotions of safety and love. Well, those are not emotions, but like joy and happiness can also be very, very triggering too, and like learning how to be with them. So I'm definitely going to have stuff in the course about that. Like, how can we stay with goodness and like expand our ability to stay with goodness too? Have you ever worked with anyone with this kind of work as it relates to healing, using psychedelics? I'm like, oh yeah, Craig, I feel like you and I chatted about this, right? I'm very curious. I've never done it myself, and I'm very curious, and I'm sure it's in my future, but I've never done it. So very curious about it for sure. And I know it has like a lot of benefits and a lot of even like now research and things like that. Last questions. Okay, I think we will wrap it up here. Thank you everyone so much. This has been honestly so fun for me. I've been loving this. I'm so glad. Oh, I love this. Thank you for sharing that it was helpful. I'm gonna save your comments and post them, but without your name. So don't you worry. So thank you so much, everybody. I'm so glad that you were all here, okay, cool. That you dedicated time to this. And really, if you wanna message me on Instagram, let me know how this was for you, this experience. I would really appreciate it. Oh, and you stay, I can't believe it's like middle of the night probably. Yeah, so thank you everyone. And again, you'll receive a recording as well, so you can watch that again. And also, yay, so excited for you to take the course. I'm going to film it all next week. I'm so pumped. So yeah, and you'll get the recording, and then you'll get the link to the course. So I also want you to know, like, have 3 days, take your time, really feel into if you want to do it or not. There's no pressure here. And it will be available later too for a higher price, but still it will be there for you. So don't stress about it. And I'm so glad. I'm so grateful for all of you. The other graphic you shared. Oh, which graphic are you talking about? If it's the PDF, I'm actually not going to share that because that's going to be in the course. So I'm keeping that in the course, that chart that I made. But any other links, just email me and I will respond with them if you would like any other links from like other cool humans that made them. Thank you everyone so much. totally love and appreciate you so deeply. And I hope to do more of these things very soon with you. And I really just, I love you. Have a good night.